Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
Hello and welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Crow, a mom of three, a yoga teacher, and a trainer and consultant who works for yoga teachers. This podcast was created for you so that you can connect to the information and inspiration each and every week and feel supported on those tricky days being a yoga teacher and an entrepreneur. Something that comes up time and time again, both on this podcast and in discussions in the Connected Yoga Teacher Facebook group, is how to get more students. I talked about this back in episode 180, where I shared my sticky note secret for more yoga students. Many of you have told me that you are using this method and that you welcome the reminder that this really works. Also in episode 162 with Mado Hesselink, we talked about filling yoga workshops. And way back in episode 49 and 50, I shared some of my strategies and action steps to grow your yoga student base. I love talking about this topic. I get asked about it so much when I'm working one-on-one with yoga teachers or in groups. And so I highly recommend checking out these other podcasts. They'll really help you. Another resource is the Fill Your Classes 3-day challenge that Amanda McKinney and I did. You have full access to that. At any point, you can start that if you go to the connectedyogateacher.com, look under trainings and events. So we've talked about this in many other places before on the podcast and in that challenge. And today, let's dig in a little bit more here on the podcast, because attracting yoga students to our yoga classes is something we can all use help with. Also, we're coming up to one of the biggest times for yoga students to sign up for classes, January, when people make their New Year's resolutions and they want to get back to their routine or take care of their emotional and physical wellness. And so this is the perfect time of year for you to put your offer out in front of these people. And your offer is something that can benefit the communities around you, the people in the world. Definitely when we're offering yoga, we're giving something that is really helpful, especially this year when we have had some high stress times. Today's interview with Steph Crowder is actually parts of a live interview we did back in July, and I wanted to share it with you here on the podcast so that you can listen on the go and grab some of her tips to try out before the new year starts. Steph's really great at taking a concept like getting more yoga students and breaking it down into easy steps that you can follow so that you have this repeatable process. So I would say each time you're thinking, how do I get people to sign up for this class or this workshop or this training? Come on back to this episode first, and then some of the other things that I mentioned. The Fill Your Classes challenge, the previous episodes, all of these links can be found on our show notes page. And you can find that over at theconnectedyogateacher.com/196. There, we're also going to outline the notes for you so that you can read these 4 steps that Steph is going to outline today that help us go from our idea for our yoga offering to new registrations. Steph also talks about some of the biggest mistakes that business owners can make that keep customers walking right past their offers, and Steph shares some of her own tips to overcome that. Before we dive in and hear from Steph, I first want to give a shout out to Schedulicity, our amazing sponsor. I have been using this scheduling software since 2011, and the team over there just cares so much. If you're thinking about trying Schedulicity out and you never have before, this is really the time to do it because Schedulicity has waived all fees for new businesses until 2021. Let's hear the hot tip of the week from the team over at Schedulicity.
Hey there, Connected Yoga Teachers. This is Brendan with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Schedulicity takes all of the guesswork out of creating an online business. You can stay organized and keep your booking, class rosters, payment processing, detailed analytic reports, and email marketing all in one place. Offer deals and stay in contact with your clients effortlessly. It's easy to follow our step-by-step setup instructions, and you never even have to leave the couch while you professionally establish your business or take your existing organization to the next level.
I also want to give a shout out of thank you to Susan Rose Yoga from the US, who wrote a review saying, "I've just discovered this podcast and I love it. It's a nice mix of business advice, yoga topics, and timely current events in yoga. Shannon is so warm and personable. If you teach yoga, you should be listening to this podcast." Thank you so much, Susan, for taking the time to write this review. I know a lot of you listen on the go, and I know what it's like to be a podcast listener and to think, oh yeah, I'm going to leave a review. I can tell you right now that it means so much to us when you do pause the podcast for a moment, click around. We make it easy because you can head right to the show notes page of any podcast, and there's a button there that says leave a review. And so if you're wondering what to get the team over here for Christmas or as a gift of thank you, the best thing that you can give us as a team is to leave us a review or send us chocolate. But a review is going to be easier. Alrighty, let's dive right into today's episode. I am so excited. Steph Crowder is actually a second-time guest on the podcast. She was on the podcast back in episode 43 talking to us about minimum viable income. If you haven't had a listen to that yet, the link is in the show notes, and this is something that I recommend each and every yoga teacher practice in their business. Find out what your minimum viable income is. This is a really important accounting note to have. But for those of you who don't know Steph yet or didn't hear that episode, I want to give you a quick introduction to who she is. Steph Crowder is the founder and CEO of Courage and Clarity. She's a former sales training director of a giant tech company. Some of you might know it. It's Groupon, who struck out on her own to become a sales coach and business strategist. She has helped thousands of entrepreneurs across all industries, including myself. In 2017, she launched the Courage and Clarity podcast. I remember when this happened, I was super excited. I had been following Steph over at Fizzle and listening to her on their podcast, and I was so excited when she launched her own podcast. Steph grew her business to 6 figures in 9 months. She focuses on teaching her clients to sell with ease by building a small but mighty community. I've been following Steph's work for years. I've learned so much from her that I use in my own business, and I'm really excited that you get to learn from her wisdom as well. So let's dive in and learn from Steph today. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast, Steph. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Shannon. I'm thrilled to join you today.
So tell us about the work that you do and who you do it for, and then we'll dive in.
Yes, absolutely. So like you said, if I go all the way back, my background is in sales and sales training. So I have stood in front of rooms of people, 50 people every week at a company that was growing super quickly, teaching people how to sell. And I ended up becoming the director of sales training at Groupon, if you guys know that company. That was for all of North America. I got to travel to Europe to teach sales training. So I know sales and selling is kind of a weird thing to fall in love with, but I totally did when I learned that selling can feel really good. And specifically thinking about how to make selling feel consultative, how to make it feel like a advisor type relationship, how to really help serve people who need and want a solution, and teaching other people to do that is really, really rewarding for me. And it's been really fun to be a young-ish, less so every year, a youngish woman who is teaching sales and sales training, because typically if you go to YouTube or look at any books, they're all written by dudes who are in their 60s and 70s. And I got nothing against dudes in their 60s and 70s. Love you guys. But it's been kind of neat to take it from a different perspective, a millennial perspective. And it's just different, right? Like sales doesn't have to be boiler room, high pressure, pitching, forcing people to do things they don't want to do, all of these connotations that typically go hand in hand with sales. What I help entrepreneurs do in all different industries is work with what they already have and what they already know to get customers simply and seamlessly. I'm really here to help people increase their customer base in a way that is aligned with your core message, with your authenticity. You don't have to sell your soul to make a buck. And so that's my favorite thing to do. Is my signature training program, which you're a part of, Shannon, is called Crickets to Customers. And it's exactly what it sounds like. I help people go from hearing crickets, not really getting much traction, to paid, sold out programs, services, and products. So yeah, that's a little bit about what I do.
That's amazing. And I like how you said that you work on helping people to get comfortable with sales. I mean,
Yes.
this is something that we need to do to run a business. We
Yes.
have to have sales.
Yeah. And it can be fun, which is always people are like, what? I'm like, no, for real. It really can be fun when you learn how to sell simply, working with what you already have, as I mentioned, and you start to get really hyper focused on how what you do changes people's lives. Then it becomes a party. And that's what I'm all about.
I would love to hear from our connected yoga teachers who here is already feeling like sales are fun for you. Hands up, big shout out if you're like, sales are fun already.
And also, if you're like, oh, selling, like more commonly, I hear people say, whoa, selling. If you feel like that, let us know too, because I get that. And I used to feel that way as well until I found a different path.
Yeah, I could maybe count on my hand a few yoga teachers who feel like selling is fun. So I'm excited that we get to dive in. What are the 4 steps? Like, where do we start with this?
Yes, absolutely. And let me just first say, everything that I'm going to be going over today is covered in much more detail inside of my mini training. It's called Same Day Sales. This is my latest and greatest, just little mini training that I put together. It costs $33. This is the most affordable offer I've never created something that's this doable. And I've done it for a number of reasons. The biggest one being we are in the middle of a pandemic. And I know lots of people across all different kinds of industries, yoga teachers, are definitely included in this. Our worlds have been turned upside down by the reality of, oh my gosh, in person is no longer an option. How do I take my whole business online? How do I truly, like, I'm being asked to change my business model overnight. And so I created Same Day Sales to walk you in depth through the 4-step process that I'm going to touch on today. And this is the process that I use every single time I want a cash boost in my business. This is truly how I go from having an idea in the morning to getting a payment notification in the same day. So I was inspired to take this process that I've used myself many times over, that I've also taught my students to use. And that is what is inside of Same Day Sales, which is a training that you can go through in one sitting and implement and start to get customers right away, even if you're just getting started. So a lot of people are like, can I do this? Can I get customers if I have no audience? Absolutely. Yes, you can. You just have to be willing to get creative and get scrappy. So if you want to learn more, go to scrappyselling.com. I would love to see some of you yoga teachers inside there. To get into those 4 steps, what I first want to share is, as you hinted at, Shannon, the big mistake. Let's just go ahead and start with that, because I'm sure a lot of people are like, what is this big mistake that people make when they're crafting offers that really truly keep your customers just walking on by? They might go to the page, they might see the opportunity, whether you're posting it on social media or sending an email, and you just don't really feel like it's getting much traction. It doesn't feel as though you're really like hitting home and resonating with this offer. The big mistake that most people make, and it's one that I've made many times, is the only reason I'm able to sit here and tell you that it's a mistake, is creating your offer in a vacuum. Okay. This is something that is a classic mistake, because what we are tempted to do typically as business owners of all kinds, as yoga teachers, really any kind of business, you think to yourself, I have an idea. I want to teach, this series of classes, or I want to do this package, or I want to teach this kind of workshop. And so what we do is we say, okay, I'm going to develop this offer. I'm going to go into my evil laboratory, as I call it. I'm going to go to my desk. I'm going to sit behind the computer. I'm going to create this whole thing, and I'm going to put it out there. And that's a huge mistake because it's a little bit of the mentality of if you build it, they will come, which is from Field of Dreams. Great movie, not a good way to run a business. Okay. That's a common fallacy. And so what I want to teach you all today is to shift from I'm going to take my best stab at an offer and hope people buy it to reverse engineering your offers. And that requires pulling your people in to the creation process from the very beginning. That is the core of the same day sales process, is using real human beings with real experiences, real problems, real desires to help you shape your offer. So many people come to me and say, I just don't know what I need to say in my sales, like on my sales page. I don't know what I need to say when I'm talking to customers. The process I'm going to walk you through today will have it so that you will never ask that question again. Because the problem is when you're like, what do I say and how do I say it? You're trying to draw it out of thin air. You're trying to come up with that from your own brain. So my advice is make it really easy on yourself. Don't wonder what you should say on your sales page. Go directly to the source of the people that you want to help and begin to pull their words, their insights, and their experiences into the offer that you're creating. So that's the big mistake.
This is so good because so often yoga teachers are asking in our connected yoga teacher group, what should I call my class? What should the description be? And they're asking other yoga teachers, and that's not usually your audience.
Yes.
Or the other thing that happens is I think if yoga teachers are creating something that is for yoga teachers, they might be afraid to share their idea because they feel like someone's going to take it. Do you ever think that that's part of it?
I do think that that's definitely part of it. I think, yeah, there's certainly competition. On top of that, I think the big thing that I notice is we may feel afraid to go to our customer or potential customer and have this conversation because you may think to yourself, well, I'm supposed to be the expert. Like, I'm not going to look like I have my stuff together if I go to people and have some vulnerability, which this does require, right? It requires that you own the fact that you don't have it all figured out. And so what I want to show you all through this process is that it is possible to stand in your expertise while also admitting that you don't know everything, And so there's a balance there. You don't want to go to people and be like, I have no idea what to create. It's not that, but it's also not like, oh, I have it all figured out. Like, I'm just going to put it out there and all of you are going to buy it. So we're going to get into how you maintain that expertise, that professionalism, while also pulling in and being savvy enough to pull in key insights from the right people.
Oh, this is so good. So oftentimes I hear like, let's validate the idea. And that sounds a bit boring. Like,
Yes.
do you have any tips for like how to make this more fun?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, 100%. I feel like I always say that there's some catchphrases in business that are just iterated so many times and repeated so many times that they like lose their meaning. And I think validating your idea is one of those. So let's get really practical and brass tacks about how to co-create offers. Let's move away from validating your idea because again, it's like devoid of meaning, and let's pick up the idea of co-creating your offer. That's like the really exciting idea to me. Everybody likes to collaborate. Everybody likes a party. Have you ever been in an experience where you're part of a brainstorm, you're building something with somebody, whether it could even be like with your spouse when you're building a family or a school project, like that feeling that you're creating something with other humans. I think all of us crave that. And I want to invite everyone to consider that creating sales offers can have that collaborative feeling. And that's what this process is going to teach you to do. So let's get into the steps because that will definitely help us learn how to actually implement this. The first step is to identify your idea. Of course, like that's, makes sense that that's where we begin. A lot of people will come to me and say, hey, I don't know what I should be selling. And a lot of people will say, I want to hold off on like coming into same day sales, purchasing this, mini product, or, even being part of my signature training program. They'll say to me, I want to figure out my offers first. I want to kind of get myself organized. And my advice is always, don't do that. Don't wait, right? Because the cool thing is one of the things that I think I really have a knack for is helping people see that you have an idea, a viable product or service idea that you're totally overlooking right now, because it is our tendency to overcomplicate. What's really fascinating is that I believe all of us have a zone of genius. All of us have a superpower. All of us have skills, and we all know things. We all have life experience. We know things. We know people. And when you know something, like the way that I know English or the way that I know to breathe, it becomes so innate to me that I take it totally for granted, right? This is why meditation and mindfulness and yoga are so powerful, because we come back to this like amazing phenomenon that our body just breathes. Like, how fantastic is that? But how often do you overlook that, right? Same thing with your skills. Every single person who's watching and listening to this has innate talents and abilities that have been so ingrained in you, you totally don't realize they have value. And that's the amazing thing. A lot of people I talk to are like, oh, I totally took for granted the fact that like I can spin up a Squarespace website in a day. Like, that's just the thing that I know how to do. Some of my students will tell me. Or like, I've been eating paleo for 10 years. I forget that people don't even know what healthy eating is. And so I'm sure everyone here can maybe think of an example of this. Maybe for you, you've been practicing. I was just talking to somebody yesterday, actually, who is a yoga teacher who helps people with chronic pain. And they're so used to, they've been using yoga for like 20 years to manage her own chronic pain. And she has forgotten that some people don't just live with chronic pain and don't even think about the fact that they could feel better. This is an innate skill. This is an innate talent that you have that you are very likely totally overlooking right now, because to you, it's like water. It's like breath. You're like, yeah, of course you can do yoga for chronic pain. Tons of people don't know that. And so the first thing I want you to think about is, what idea could be right under your nose right now? Like low-hanging fruit. You're not even thinking that it's an idea because it feels too easy. That's a good indication that you have a good idea in front of you. It's like you might be thinking to yourself, like, I couldn't do something with that. That's too easy. That is the first clue that that's a really good same-day sales idea, because it's tapping into what you already have and what you already know. A good scrappy selling same-day sales idea should be something that you don't need to go out there and read a book about. You don't need to go out there and get a certification for. It's available to you right now with what and who you already know. So that's the first thing, is identifying an idea that feels like that.
That's so good, Steph. I want all of our connected yoga teachers to listen to what you just said. You do not need to read a book,
No.
learn more about this, go out and take a course. This is what we do as yoga teachers. We think, okay, I want to specialize in yoga for chronic pain or persistent pain. That means I need to take all of these specialized trainings, which, yes, but you're right. That lived experience of, I've lived with chronic pain and here's how I dealt with it with yoga.
Yes, absolutely.
So our secret thing, this one thing that we have, isn't I'm a yoga teacher. It's more specialized than that.
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's more so, sometimes people describe this as like the thing that everyone comes to you for. It's like the thing that everybody asks you about. And it's so natural to you. When something comes naturally to us, I think on some subconscious level, we all assume that this needs to feel difficult. Like that, we've been taught that making money is hard. We've been taught that business is hard. And so when an easy idea is right in front of us, we look right past it because we're like, well, it can't possibly be that. Like, that's way too easy. So I always say, like, simple, simple, simple. Your tendency, your gut is going to want to overcomplicate it, right? Your gut is going to want to create a 6-7 week course when the reality is you could get on the phone with somebody right now and create a customer. So the first step is to identify an idea, and it's an idea that should feel natural and easy and available to you right now.
Okay, this is so good. I've seen you do this in your own business.
Yes, all the time. And it's what I teach in same-day sales, because every single person has this. Every person, I've not met somebody who's gone through same-day sales and been like, I have no ideas. No, this will drudge up an idea for you.
Okay, good stuff.
Yep.
So that's step one.
That's step one. And inside of same-day sales, if you jump in over there, there's a 3-step criteria that I teach to help you identify that idea. So that can be really helpful. The second step, once you're like, okay, I think I have a viable, sort of easy, natural idea. The second step is to locate leads. This is a question I get all the time. Okay, cool. Where? Where am I going to get people from? How are they going to find me? I bet for people watching this and listening, you're like, yeah, that was my question. Is like, how am I like, I know I want customers. I'm ready to help people. Where are they going to come from? So there's kind of a common mistake embedded in this one too, which I love talking about this because nobody else is talking about it. So I am happy to be the one to reveal this kind of dirty secret of the internet. If any of you follow online entrepreneurs, none of them like to talk about the fact that their first customers probably came from their boyfriend's cousin's mom or their kids' school PTA or their yoga community or their, kids daycare, or their neighbor. You get what I'm saying, right? Personal network is so overlooked. And you see, I know I'm guilty of it too. On my Instagram, it looks like I'm just slinging these deals and everybody's just finding me online. And it's like all this passive income stuff, which of course is attractive for a number of reasons. But the reality is good salespeople, people who are ready to get a cash boost, leverage who they already know. And they recognize the reality that there are totally hot leads hiding in your network right now. And so that's the first thing, is to start to ask yourself, where might someone be lurking that I'm not thinking about right now? So for example, to just stay with the persistent pain idea, does your 65-year-old next door neighbor, is that a good person that you could talk to? How about, I don't know, you can think of so many different versions of this, right? If you take a gardening class, are there people in that community who are living with persistent pain that you've never talked to about that before? These opportunities are hiding underneath our nose all of the time. And I think there is sort of this idea that I'm trying to build an online business, why would I go offline? But the truth of the matter is so many people got their start. I mean, that's where I got my start. Absolutely. My first customer came from an in-person referral when I went to a networking event and was just handing out business cards. And so it's really important to recognize that, yes, you're building an online business. Yes, you're building an email list and, you want to grow your social media following. That stuff's all great. But guess what? Those are long-term strategies. If you're trying to get a cash boost now, you want to be able to pay your bills this month, which all of us have that. Think about your current network, recognize that your Instagram is going to take 6 months to grow. It just, at least, and so there's a real opportunity. If you are raising your hand saying, yes, I want a revenue boost. Yes, I want customers today. You really have to be willing to ask the question, where are potential customers hiding in my everyday life that I'm not thinking about right now? A big one is previous clients. Absolutely huge. People often, that's the first place that I go when I have a new offer, because those are the people who've trusted me enough to buy from me before. And I think often we think to ourselves, oh, if we want to grow, we have to go out there and get new customers. Never a bad idea to get new customers, but statistics and data show us that the cheapest way to get a customer is a repeat customer. And so it's really important to think of, who have you worked with before?
Yes. Oh, this is so good. And sometimes this work feels difficult. Sometimes this is the really tricky, oh
Yeah.
gosh, I need to email these people. And sometimes it's a personal email to each and every one of those people. We had an episode really recently on the podcast with Natalie Ekdahl, recently to when we're recording live, where she talked about this network. And those are the people then talking to their friends. And if they don't know that you specialize in yoga for persistent pain or yin yoga and what that actually means, they can't tell other people what you do. So It's not even that we are selling to our next door neighbor, but they might be interested, but they might just be telling, oh, it comes up in their mind. And you do this, I bought crickets to customers and you reached out to me and said, hey, Shannon, I have this training. I see that you bought it already, because I jumped in and got the selling. When I saw it was $33, I was like, I'm in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you reached out to me and said, hey, let's chat about this. And that's a great example of you doing the work. I didn't reach out to you for this interview. You reached out to me.
absolutely. I think, again, it's not highly publicized. I try to show it on my social media because I want people to know, my Friday night last week was, even though, guys, like my business, I have a multi six-figure business. I've been at this for years now. Even at my level, last Friday, I had a glass of wine. It was like happy hour in my house. And I was on my computer answering hesitations and objections from a customer who was thinking about joining me inside of Crickets to Customers, my signature program. So make no mistake, like I'm here having these conversations with people too. It's not all like, great, now it just takes off and we can all go home and be happy. It's a constantly evolving conversation. And so there's that. And then what I also want to just piggyback off of that you said that was so important too, is when, let's say you do talk to your neighbor, I want to shift us away from thinking, oh gosh, Steph, are you telling me I have to go pitch my neighbor? Like that sounds really stressful. I don't want to be known as that person. Let's start to shift our thinking from pitching everybody, from your neighbor to your family functions, to opening up conversation. Okay. So instead of saying like, hey neighbor, I noticed that you have, chronic back pain. Like, would you be interested in my yoga? No one, that's never a fun conversation to have. Instead, I want you to start to open the dialogue and say, hey, like, I noticed when we were in conversation before, you mentioned that your back's been bothering you. I actually help a lot of people with that through yoga. Do you mind if I ask you some questions about like what you've tried before, right? Start to open up a conversation with people and ask them, well, what else have you tried? How does it feel to be you? What, how motivated are you to make the pain go away? Just kind of start to have like curious conversation with people. That's really where the shift comes, where it's not just like a one-way. Pitching is like a one-way. Hey, I have a thing, come buy it. And so you shouldn't be surprised when like nobody answers that. That doesn't feel good. I always like to relate sales to dating. I do this all the time. And that's like being on a first date where the person sitting across from you talks about themselves the whole time. You're like, oh my God, how, like, is this date over yet? Right. And so we have to shift our thinking to, no, we need to create a two-way conversation. And that really brings us into the third step, which is co-creating. I know I already mentioned co-creating. The third step is where this really happens. And that's where we start to talk to relevant people, the neighbor with the chronic pain, the, kids high school principal who deals with pain, whatever. Like I'm clearly just making this up, but you get the idea, where you just kind of start to open dialogue and say, hey, this is work that I actually do helping people. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about what your experience has been, because I'm always looking to help more people. I'm trying to refine my services. I'm on a mission to help as many people out there free themselves from pain. Would you be willing to have a quick chat with me? And what you're going to do in your co-creation is just get super curious about what it's like to be in their shoes, really understanding what does it feel like to wake up every day and have no idea what to do about that persistent pain. How would their life be different if they were able to keep up with their grandkids? Like, why does it matter to them? What would be possible if they didn't feel that pain? Really approaching this from a place of curiosity. When you do that, that's where the insights start to flow in. That's where people start to say, well, man, if there was something that I could do that would take away my back pain, I would be all for it, right? That is like music to your ears because you're thinking, I know the answer, right? But the key is to not rush in with your solution. The key is to really understand what makes this person tick and what is going to motivate them to take that next step. What is it that they would need to hear to say, okay, gosh, sign me up, right? That is how we start to really unearth these incredible insights, by making sure that we are truly getting to know what it's like to be inside the head of an ideal person.
So just to clarify here, Steph, are we talking to people who aren't working with us, or will we start to look at our existing, maybe we have a few yoga students who already see us and have persistent pain?
You can absolutely do either way, both, honestly. I would definitely, if you're looking to create like a new offer and you want to get a cash boost, I love going to my previous customers first. So that's going to be, if we think about, maybe you guys have heard about like warm leads versus cold leads, right? Your previous clients are going to be the warmest. That means that you've, to be like, I guess to put it literally, like you've warmed them up the most. They have the most trust built with you because they've worked with you and they've experienced what it's like to be part of your yoga sessions or whatever it is that you've done for them, right? So if you're creating a new offer, definitely I like to go back to previous clients first and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing a new thing. Here's a little bit about it. let me know if this sounds like something that like piques your interest and let's talk about it. So I'm not pitching them something. I'm not saying, here it is, it's going to cost you $750, like yes or no. No. It's more so, I'm thinking about spinning up a new workshop where I help people manage anxiety through the pandemic. If that sounds like something that would be up your alley, let me know, because I want to have a chat with people and see how I could make it most useful. That's how I'd go back to a previous client and kind of start to jam with them a little bit, give them just a taste of what your idea is. And then the co-creation conversation happens when you take that into private conversation and say, hey, Shannon, thanks for telling me that you were feeling interested in this workshop I'm thinking about creating. Let's talk about what you think would make that really valuable. Tell me about the anxiety you've been feeling in the pandemic, and just really get into a conversation about why that person would be interested in something like that.
This is so good. I actually have an example of how I did this and how I didn't, and the didn't work. So I did pelvic health professionals. I talked to people who specialize in pelvic health and said, I have this idea for a membership. I have this idea for us all to work together. What would you need out of that? And we had this, I just had a lot of questions for a bunch of people in that industry. Then I went over and created the collective for the Connected Yoga Teacher Group. And I did what you said. I created it in a vacuum. I didn't ask them any questions. I created it and it kind of flopped. I'm not giving up on it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But what I need to do is go back and talk to my audience and say, hey, what would you want out of this?
Yes. And absolutely. And I think when you're having these conversations, one thing that I like to always point out is it really is a two-way, like you're bringing something to the party in these conversations too, right? What we don't want to do is like go to customers and just say like, tell me what you want me to create. That's not what I'm suggesting. And the reason for that is because they don't know. If they knew what they needed, they wouldn't need you, would they? I always like to think about the quote from Henry T. Ford, right? He created the Model T, the precursor to the automobile. And his famous quote on this is, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Okay.
Right.
They couldn't have said, we'd like a car. The car didn't exist. But what did they tell him? They said, we don't feel we're going fast enough on horseback. And so it was up to Henry to say, all right, my insight that I'm gleaning from this is people are willing to pay to go faster. How do I make that happen? So think about that. He unearthed that insight, which is quickness, speed was the key feature that people were willing to pay top dollar for. So what you have to figure out is, what is the key feature that people are willing to pay for? Is it taking their pain away? Is it sleeping at night? Is it so I can stop snapping off at my kids because I'm so stressed? Like, what is that key feature that I would say, if you tell me you could take that away, I'm gonna go ahead and pay for that right now. That's what you're trying to unearth in the conversation. It's up to you to create the solution. You're gonna create the container, whether that's a workshop or a class series. Doesn't matter. What you're getting from your customers is, what is the thing, the pain that you can take away for them, or it can be pain or pleasure, right? It can be a solution you're providing, or it could be just bringing joy to people's lives. What is that thing that makes them say, gosh, that's a no-brainer for me? That's what we're trying to unearth with co-creation conversations.
And this is really good because yoga teachers so often want to create the offering and explain what that thing is in yoga. Like yin yoga is a great example, or restorative yoga. If someone has never done yoga, they don't understand the benefits, and we can't it'd be like trying to sell a car just by saying buy a car and they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I love that analogy.
Yeah,
They're like
looking at that going, what is that? I'm not getting in that. Yeah.
You have to say, this will help you to go faster.
Right.
This will help you to not snap at your kids.
Yes. You told me you want to go fast. I can't get you a faster horse, but let me show you how we can do that. Right. So this is what's super important. And this is a key shift when you realize this, that price is just a reflection, like someone's willingness to pay or not willingness to pay is a reflection of how well they understand the transformation. Okay. If they understand the transformation, if it's a problem that they're motivated to solve, guys, they will figure it out. They will figure out how to make that happen. Okay. Maybe they need a payment plan, maybe they need a credit card or whatever. But when somebody really understands and they're motivated, the motivation has to be there to want the transformation. You wouldn't be somebody saying like, I'm just willing to do nothing about my back pain. It'd have to be somebody who's like, yeah, I want this pain to go away. Once they understand that you are the person that can take that pain away, price becomes a secondary conversation. And it's really important to recognize that.
Oh, this is so good. Okay. Thank you for that, Steph.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the third step, co-creating. And then the fourth and final step is tweak and book. All right. So what's really cool about this process is you're using real people to craft these offers as you're having these conversations, right? And you're talking to people and you're unearthing what's important to them and you're hearing from their side about their story and what they're motivated to change. You get to take those insights, use it to create an offer, and then put it back in front of those people. So when I do this, I'll be having private conversation. My favorite example of this that I talk about inside of same day sales is when I was going on maternity leave last year. My son was born on September 4th. The month of August, I was like, you know what? I have time. I want to do one last hurrah. I could really use a cash boost to kind of extend my maternity leave because I wanted to take off through the end of the year. And I decided that I was going to do a August only month-long coaching intensive. And so the way that I did this is I kind of put the call out there. I did it to my previous clients and I said, hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. If this sounds, and I just kept it really vague, right? I was sort of like, in August, I want to coach maybe 10 people or so. If that's something that sounds interesting, I did this on Facebook in my private community. I said, drop me a comment. Let's talk about it. Let me get a sense of where you're at. A bunch of people commented. And I kid you not, I'm sitting here in my office with about 10 Facebook Messenger windows just up across the bottom of my screen, just asking people, hey, why did you raise your hand for this? Like, if I were to coach you in August, what matters to you? What would make this super doable for you? And as I'm having these juicy conversations, again, 10 windows up along the bottom of my screen, I've got lead pages open and I'm crafting the offer. Like it's like a living offer. I'm creating this offer based on people saying, well, it would need to have one-on-one coaching. Well, it would need to have Voxer access. Well, it would need to have this. It would need to have that. I would need to know that I would launch something at the end of the month. Like these are all insights that came through. And so as I'm creating what they're telling me that they need, I take it, put it back in front of them. This is the fourth step and say, hey, can I get some feedback on this? Am I in the ballpark? Right. And people will say, oh my God, like, where do I sign up? Or they'll say, and if they give me the hesitation, I know I'm not quite there yet. And I need to keep refining it. So this is truly like this, in this particular example of the maternity leave idea, I made that Facebook post at like sometime in the morning. And by the time I went to bed, I had made 10K in a day. $10,000. Okay. So this is totally doable. You know, you may or may not use this process and create an offer on that level. Remember, I've been at it for a while, but a bunch of my students have gone to bed the same night and made a few $100 in the same day. And so when I tell you that you never again have to worry, like, what do I write on the page? I didn't make up what went on that sales page. It literally came from these 10 conversations I was having. It takes all the guesswork out of what it is that your clients and customers need to hear to recognize that this is the offer for them. So that's the fourth step, is using those conversations to truly breathe life into the offer and then putting that back in front of those people and seeing if you're in the ballpark or if you need to keep tweaking it.
Oh, this is so good. I'm thinking of another example. I know a yoga teacher who's specializing in yoga for fertility. So she could put it out there to some people who have taken previous classes. Here, I'm thinking of doing this 6-week session and then start those conversations and completely craft the page of, because right now she was asking me the other day, should I do it live or should I do it pre-recorded? I mean, that's a great question for the people who would sign up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And my advice would be, I mean, just for same day sales, do it live. You know, that's a great example of working with what you already have, right? Like go fast, challenge yourself to just go, because pre-recording is another way that you get to kind of like stall, you know, selling it for a lot of people. Push yourself to do it now. Push yourself to start next week, you know? And so that's a great example. The way that I would do that particular, if I were in her shoes, that business owner, I would go to my previous clients and like, let's just say that there was a private community or something. I would say, or if it's email, either way, you could say, who here is like trying to get pregnant in the next year? You know, if that's you, drop me a comment so that I can message you, because I have some questions about, like, you know, I'm thinking of creating something for you and I have some questions. And so I would just even leave it at that and see like who out there would raise their hand and say, like, me, I'm thinking about getting pregnant. And that's where you get to go into conversation and say, all right, tell me what's it like to be you right now? What are you trying? You know, like just get into it, right? Get really curious and use those insights in pulling it into an offer. So yeah, absolutely. That's a great example of how you could do it.
I love how you invite us to dive in and do it a little bit scared or
Yes,
not fully prepared.
totally.
I've seen you do that over and over again. And that's really like done is better than perfect.
Yes. My favorite expression on that is build the parachute on the way down, y'all. Like seriously, jump off the cliff because you're not going to hit the ground. You're going to figure it out. And so sometimes most of us, myself definitely included, we need a little bit of that pressure to make ourselves do it, or else we'll just never be ready.
And so, what happens then if we create something and it doesn't take off right away? Do you have some thoughts on that? Like that
Absolutely.
happens often.
Yes, totally. So your question being sort of like, what do you do when you put it back in front of somebody and they don't, you don't really feel like it's getting the traction? I like to really ask people honestly. I like to ask them straight up, hey, well, when I put it back in front of them, I'll say, am I in the ballpark here? What's missing? And I ask that really strategically. I don't just say, what do you think? Because I think that lets people off the hook a little bit. What I like to say is, what did I miss? Okay. That's like the question I'll lead with. I'll say, here it is. I've spun it up into an offer. What did I miss? And so if something, they can either say nothing, I'm in, like, where do I sign up? Or I'm kind of forcing them to pinpoint something, if they're going to say no, what is it that is missing from this offer? And I've had plenty of people tell me, for example, my year on the wall tune-up month-long workshop that I did a few months ago, I had some people say to me, I'm not looking for more help planning my next month. I'm looking for accountability. And so what I had to do was go back to the page and say, all right, if y'all want coaching, you got coaching. Let's do some calls. Let's put an emphasis. I actually added a 30-day private community onto that offer. It wasn't going to have any community attached to it, but people said, we want accountability. So I said, cool, we can do a pop-up Facebook group and I'll support you for the month. That came from my conversations with people. So use it as an opportunity. When you get hesitations, use it as an opportunity to strengthen your offer. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get customers. It doesn't mean that you did it wrong. It just might mean that a little bit more tweaking is necessary in order to make it a hell yes for people.
Connected Yoga Teachers, I wanted to pop in here for a moment just to explain that when Steph and I did this interview live, we actually took some questions from those that were attending either on our YouTube channel or from our Facebook group. Jenny was one of those. Huge shout out to you, Jenny, for sharing some really great questions that led me to ask Steph what we do when we're sending emails and posting on social media and still not seeing students sign up. And here's what Steph said to that.
Making sure that I'm opening up a dialogue with people is really, really important. Okay. So let's just say that Jenny is emailing people, and this is really common, what people will typically do. And I have no way of knowing if Jenny has done this. I'm using her totally as a guinea pig. So Jenny, thank you for just letting me borrow you for a second. Let's just say that you're doing the classic thing that most people do, and you're blasting out an email. You may even be reaching out one-on-one, but even still, you're probably saying something like, hey, here's the opportunity, blah, 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 let me know if you're interested, right? And that's not really opening up a dialogue. So what I like to do is take a step back. I'm not going to even tell people like, here's what it is and here's how to sign up. What I would do instead is say, I'm looking for, let's look for an angle here. Like, why should people join in August? Is it because my favorite example right now is like, holy God, back to school, pandemic. Who isn't stressed as hell right now? So I would open up the conversation and say, I'm looking for, a group of women. I'm pretending you work with women who could really use some extra support as we face, the pandemic is spiking if you're in the United States. And I am wanting to support more people, bring them deeper into mindfulness so that August doesn't have to suck. I'd love to have a conversation with you about how, like, first of all, does this resonate with you? Like, do you feel like you've been facing more anxiety around the pandemic and what we're going through right now? If so, hit reply to this email. I'd love to hear a little bit about where your head's at. This is my line that you guys are free to borrow. I always like to say something like, I'm always trying to refine my offers. I'm always trying to create things that are really relevant to my students. So I'd love to have just a little like back and forth conversation with you about how you're feeling right now, right? Something along those lines so that I can open up the conversation. Yes, Jenny says, amen to more conversational emails. I was not doing that before. This is the shift between classic selling, which is like, here, buy my thing, versus consultative selling, which is before, again, guys, I love analogies. I love thinking about dating. Before the marriage proposal, get somebody to go on a date with you, okay? And the date is just a conversation, okay? Once you open up the conversation, it is so much easier to get a customer, yes, but also to understand if they're not going to become a customer, why. You are so much more likely to get ghosted if you just say, hi, will you marry me? I mean, come on. If somebody said that to you, you'd be like, you're creepy, please leave, right? So what we really want to do is get that person to go on that first date. And that's by opening up the conversation.
If you want to listen to Steph some more, she's over at the Courage and Clarity podcast. So if you go to courageandclarity.com, this is the website for that. If you feel like, gosh, this was good, I want to keep listening to Steph. She shares a lot on her podcast. Is there anything else, Steph, that you can think of that might help us right now? If let's just call it out. It's really hard sometimes to try and sell and continue to sell.
Yes.
Like you put it out, you do the emails, you follow the step, and then you're like, oh gosh, I have to do it again.
Yep. What I would say that really helps me, and I think everybody needs to find, kind of like in yoga, right? Like I'm not a huge yogi, but I've done enough to know that, you got to kind of find what works for you in terms of your intention. Thinking similarly about your business and about selling, I like to tell myself that it's going to work out. Okay. Like you're going to make it work. That is one of the biggest lessons I've learned is what's that expression? Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. It's 100% true in selling and getting customers. I want everybody here to start to tell yourselves, you are going to get customers. You are going to make sales. It's just a question of when, how, and in what fashion, okay? You can get there, but you have to be willing to continue to ask, what else? What else can I do? Where else can I go? What rock can I overturn? That is the essence of scrappy selling. Getting scrappy means we don't just put it out there once, twice, 3 times and say, well, shoot, it didn't work. Getting scrappy is an attitude of, all right, I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going to try something different today. I'm going to reach out to Shannon Crow on Instagram and ask if we can do a live in her community. I'm going to call in favors with my friends and ask them to post it. Like, what are all of the things that I can do? Because when you are determined, you will figure it out. It's so helpful, I think, if you tell yourself, like, instead of going into it as like, gosh, I hope this works. Like, oh my God, what if it doesn't work? Which I fall into all the time. I like to try to consciously shift my attitude to, no, Steph, we're going to find a way for this to work. It's going to work. I just have to find it.
All right. I loved this stuff so much. I'm excited that we get to dive in together.
Thank you so much for having me. What a wonderful, kind community you've cultivated here. It's been my honor. Thank you guys. It's been a blast.
Well, connected yoga teachers, I want to hear from you. What were your key takeaways there? Was there anything that you thought, oh yeah, I'm going to take that nugget that Steph gave today and implement that, try that out to get some sales in my yoga business, to get some registrations or students signing up? I also want to give another huge shout out of thanks to Steph. I reached out to her just this week and asked her, is this still a thing that's happening? Do you still have your same-day sales program that when I signed up for it was $33? And she said, yes, I do. It's staying there. I'll leave it there for your listeners. So we will make sure to link to that in the show notes. And if you just want to go directly to the website, it's scrappyselling.com. I am really hoping that you feel energized by Steph's energy around selling. Sometimes as yoga teachers, I hear the general message of selling is uncomfortable. I don't want to be sleazy. I don't want to bother people. And I just want to remind you that you are offering something that people need. As my good friend Amanda McKinney says, you are just inviting people to the party. And they will let you know if it's a good fit for them or not. But the marketing, the promotion of things, the telling people about your offering, that's all the inviting part. Let them make their decisions and really craft your offerings for what people are asking for. This podcast is actually a great example of that. People ask me, how do you come up with topic ideas? I don't need to. We have almost 10,000 yoga teachers in our Connected Yoga Teacher Facebook group. If you're not already in there, come on over and join the party. It is such a supportive group. And each and every day, I see questions in there that are fantastic podcast episodes. So each and every day, I sit down at my desk and I have this amazing job of showing up to serve and help the yoga teachers out there. That's what I'm doing. You are doing the same thing. You are showing up, serving, and helping the people who need yoga and the people who want yoga. And just like I work on promoting this podcast so that yoga teachers can find it, I want you to dig in and promote your yoga offerings so that people can find them. If you hit a challenge or a roadblock in this promotion part, in this marketing part, come on over to the Facebook group and post about it. Tell us what it feels like. You are not alone in this, and we can dig in and help you out there. Also, watch for the share threads that come out every once in a while. When we post like it's a share thread time, I want to see your offerings in those share threads. You can't do promotion all the time because that would be 10,000 people posting to the wall all the time. But when we have a share thread come out, then you can definitely post if it's related to your yoga offering. Okay, before I sign off, I want to say a huge thank you to our team over here, Suzanne, Crunch, Nick, and Sinead. You do so much behind the scenes for our Facebook group and also for the podcast. And I also want to thank you, dear listener. Your time is so valuable and it means so much to me that we just got to hang out and learn how to promote and market your yoga offerings. So remember, just choose one thing to implement today. If you heard one thing that really resonated in today's episode, that's the thing to hold on to, jot it down quickly, make a promise to yourself that that's the action you're going to take this week. And I also want you to take some time to stay connected. What can you do to stay connected to yourself, your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?